In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make enemy AI that can't see you through walls. So I'm actually using a scene that I used for my simple enemy AI tutorial, and I've added some code to make it so the enemies do not see me if there is scenery in between us. So let me show you how I did it. This scene is remixable, and the link to it is in the description. So to be able to add this functionality, I just had to make a little change to how the enemy detects the player, obviously. This tutorial is not on this AI. I have a tutorial on the AI, and the link is in the description as well. The logic that detects the player was right here, and all it was before was a zone. It literally was just a zone, and I've replaced it with logic that is able to sense if there is scenery or something collidable blocking, like in between the enemy and the player. And that logic is this. It's really simple, but it's a little confusing, so let me just go through it. There are two separate things you're sensing, right? You're sensing, the first thing is whether the player is in the enemy's cone of vision. It's vision cone, right? And that's with this zone. This is a cone-shaped zone, and it is detecting the player tag. And if the player is within this, it outputs a positive value. But you see, we have an AND gate. If all of these things are true, that means the player is in vision. So what other things do we need to check? Because if the player's in the zone, isn't it in vision, right? Well, no. Let's say the player's here, right? And the enemy's here. Yes, it's in the vision cone, but no, it should not be in vision because this cube is in the way, is blocking it, obviously. So how do we check that? Well, that's where the AND gate comes in. There are two other checks, and we use a laser scope, all right? So what is a laser scope? This isn't a tutorial on laser scopes, but it's basically a laser, like just straight up a laser, shooting from, in this case, the enemy's head. And I have it programmed to hit the first friend or the first piece of scenery, and it's X-rayed. So it's going to hit friends or scenery. The laser scope is colliding with this piece of scenery, and we're getting a little collision arrow. But we don't know. See, here's where it gets a little complicated, right? So we don't know if it's hitting scenery or if it's hitting the player. The laser scope doesn't really directly tell us that. We just know it's hitting one or the other. So how do we check that? Well, we know it's hitting something. We can actually put the output into a splitter and check if the output is player owned or not. This is really important to this technique. So if it is not player owned, so if it is player owned, that is the third thing of this AND gate. So again, if the player is in the vision cone, if the laser scope, which is always, I didn't mention this before, it's always pointing at the player. I have tag, it points at the player tag. So if the player is in the vision cone, if this laser scope is hitting either scenery or the player, and what it is hitting is player owned, meaning it's hitting the player, which is player owned, obviously. Then if all those things are true, then the enemy can see the player. In this case, the laser scope, what it's hitting is not player owned. This cube, this scenery cube, I say scenery because it's the scenery label. It's not player owned. So this third input of the AND gate will not be fulfilled. It won't be positive. So that results in the enemy not seeing the player. The settings of this laser scope are really important. We have it local space. I'm not sure if that actually matters, but I think it does because it'll make it move with the enemy. We have it like really a very long range. 100 is pretty long. We have it pointing at tags, and we're having it pointing at the player tag. But most importantly, in my opinion, is consider players. This needs to be turned on because it'll allow us to check if what it's hitting is player owned or not. It would be nice if there was an output where it told us what label was being hit, but that's not a thing. That it doesn't tell us that. But we do know if it's player owned or not because we have this checked. And I can also go through these settings. So detection mode means it's going to be trying to hit either visible or invisible things, doesn't really matter, and collidable or not collidable things. So both means it doesn't matter. And then any selected. So it's going to be detecting either friends or scenery. We want it to detect both because we want it to stop at scenery, right? If it hits scenery, that means it's not hitting the player. But now it's hitting the player. So that third thing would trigger. It's not triggering right now because this is technically not player owned until the imp goes inside of it. So let me show you. Let me pin this. So you'll see this knock gate turn on. See? Because it is player owned. But once the imp leaves it, it's not player owned anymore. So that's how this method works. That's why it works. I'm able to sense whether or not what this laser scope is hitting is player owned. One thing that I forgot to address, why not just do this? Why not just make it be a laser scope, only detect friends, and turn X-ray off, and make sure it's only detecting collidable things? So in this case, it's checking if the player is in the vision cone and if the laser scope is hitting a friend. In this case, the laser scope, because X-ray is off, it will stop at scenery, right? So it'll never hit this this player because it's stopping at scenery. Why won't this work? Well, it will work until there's a second enemy. And in this case, the laser scope gets blocked by the enemy. And you don't really want that. So see how there's no like collision arrow, but if I move the enemy, there is a collision arrow. So in this case, this enemy behind cannot see the player through its friend, its enemy friend. Maybe you want that, but in the vast majority of cases, I highly doubt that's what you would want as the game designer. Like this enemy blocking the vision of this enemy, it just doesn't make sense. So in fact, this is the solution I had earlier, but when I did some testing with multiple enemies, I noticed that the enemies were blocking each other. So that's why this solution is necessary. We need to check whether or not what's being hit is player owned. That's it, guys. I hope this tutorial helped you. It's been a while since I made a tutorial, so it's nice to get another one out. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any let me know if you have any requests for more AI tutorials. I know the simple enemy AI tutorial that used this scene did really, really well. So you guys are clearly interested in this kind of thing. So let me know, because it's hard for me to just make tutorials. Because I never know like what you guys actually want or need. So definitely request whatever you need. But that's it for now, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.